I am Alex, born into a single-parent family dominated by an overbearing mother and wayward sisters. The eldest, Megan, was 13 years older than me, and Anna was 10 years older. Most likely, I became an unplanned child, guilty of the fact that my parents separated. My father left when I was only 5 years old and never came back. As a child, I suffered bullying at school and mistreatment at home. All I needed was my mother's love, an elementary expression of approval that I had never received. Despite the obstacles, I made progress in my studies, devoting 12 years to them. I enrolled at Kingston University in South London, seeking refuge from home life. It was at university that I crossed paths with Holly. She had an amazing figure, radiating beauty and self-confidence. Unlike her, I was an introvert. Holly graduated from university with a degree in creative writing, and I was focused on getting a master's degree in mechanical engineering and design. I didn't have the confidence to approach her because she easily attracted the attention of men with her brown hair and captivating brown eyes. Her beauty seemed unattainable to me. The men who courted her were sociable and popular. Suddenly, one of Holly's friends struck up a conversation with me at a party, as a result of which Holly joined him. Despite my lack of experience with women, my modesty and shyness seemed to intrigue her. I asked her to be my girlfriend, and we started dating. I'm not afraid to say that she was my first intimate partner. But after about 6 months, rumors began to circulate that she was dating other men. Having no hard evidence, I did not dare to discuss this situation with her. Holly was a pampered person. She always got her way thanks to her parents and sister Caroline, which left its mark on our relationship. I put up with her self-confidence, her tendency to make scenes in public, which often made me feel uncomfortable. I fell in love for the first time, a feeling that was completely new to me. After graduating from college, we both got jobs and rented an apartment near Southampton, New Hampshire. Her family roots attracted us to the area as I became estranged from my relatives. A year later, we tied the knot and soon Sophie appeared in our lives. A few years later, Eva appeared. Holly loved being a mother, and our relationship seemed perfect. As the years passed, I moved up the career ladder and eventually became part of Walker Engineering. 10 years ago, salary increases and bonuses allowed us to save up for a more beautiful house. However, the economic difficulties of 2008 made that year difficult for many. Job cuts and reduced contracts meant we had to work longer hours without additional pay. While our daughters were at school and I was absorbed in work, I found out that Holly was having an affair with a man from our university. At first, I doubted who her lover might be and suspected a classmate who had recently moved to the area. Arguing with Holly about my suspicions turned out to be useless. She just laughed at my fears. Despite this, a stable job and income allowed me to purchase a beautiful house. Holly insisted on finding a house that would match our status, whatever it was. Despite some hesitation, I eventually agreed, and we bought a charming 5-bedroom detached house in Southampton in a buyer-friendly market. We managed to make an excellent deal, although the mortgage loan turned out to be slightly higher than we expected. One of the unusual decisions for me was to open a new savings account exclusively in my name. I transferred only my part of the bonus to it, and since I was the main earner who handled all financial issues, Holly didn't even know about its existence. Looking back, it was one of the wisest decisions I could have made. I felt the need for security because I wasn't sure of Holly's intentions if her past love interest resurfaced. Fortunately, everything settled down in the end, and my attention remained focused on my daughters. I prioritized their education and spent time with them on weekends, participating in activities such as dance classes, concerts, and trips to the zoo. Meanwhile, Holly seemed more interested in social gatherings with her extravagant friends, and I had to interact with other husbands who also seemed to be influenced by their wives to varying degrees. My friends joked that I was under Holly's control, and even my colleagues at work made comments about her dominating me. A few months ago, the situation finally changed when Eva left for university, leaving Holly and me alone for the first time in almost 2 decades. While helping Eva move into a new apartment with her sister, she suddenly turned to me and asked why I was still with their mother. Surprised by her directness, I listened as Eva, who had always been reserved like me, tearfully told me about the rumors of her mother's affair with Henry Walker from my job. Although the news was unexpected, I wasn't completely surprised. Despite the temptation to investigate her actions over the years, I refrained, fearing it would cause discord in the family and make my daughters dislike me, as my sisters dislike our father. I tolerated her infidelities because I couldn't accept the thought of losing the bond we had created. She was still deeply dear to me. This realization had several significant effects on me. Firstly, it helped me see the extent of my daughters' resentment towards their mother, which turned out to be much stronger than I had previously thought. Secondly, it brought forth emotions from my past and how they shaped my vulnerability. Finally, I realized that at work, I had become the object of gossip and teasing, especially from Henry Walker, who turned out to be the nephew of the company owner and the one with whom my wife betrayed me. Feeling depressed and unable to tolerate the situation any longer, especially now that my youngest daughter knew about Holly, I realized I had to confront this issue. Sitting at the kitchen table, I waited nervously for Holly's return. When she finally showed up and began unpacking, she looked at me with indifference and contempt. It took me a while to gather the courage to bring up the topic. I asked Holly about her affair with another man, to which she denied it was an affair, claiming it didn't matter. I was stunned and recoiled, expecting her to justify her behavior. She expressed her admiration for me as a breadwinner and friend, but admitted that she has certain needs that I cannot satisfy. Her straightforward confession did not leave me indifferent, and I asked if this meant that she was being unfaithful. Holly explained that it was only about a physical connection without emotional or mental involvement. I was shocked by her bold confession and confused. She casually mentioned her interest in younger men, which took me by surprise. I couldn't help but raise my voice in disbelief at her actions. Despite Holly admitting that she was dating 2 other men, she warned me against shouting and seemed to expect my silence. She gave me an ultimatum, saying that I had to agree to her terms, otherwise, she would leave me for someone else. I didn't say anything, hoping she would see the hurt in my expression. Trying to defend herself, she said that her friends often behave the same way and that it can strengthen relationships. I was shocked that she used her friends' behavior as an excuse, considering it disrespectful and self-centered. She also questioned my ability to communicate with other women, confidently stating that our relationship would develop according to her terms, warning me not to jeopardize the current situation. In truth, she was right. Throughout the 22 years of our relationship, I have consistently shown loyalty and obeyed her wishes, but now it became obvious to everyone that I was being deceived, undermining my authority among my loved ones. The next day when I arrived at my office, I ran into Henry Walker, a man connected to my wife. His question about my condition, accompanied by an arrogant grin, only irritated me even more. I decided to keep my thoughts to myself. Passing by a coffee machine, I heard the laughter of a group of men nearby. Ignoring their amusement, I walked on, feeling vulnerable. Even Olivia, the boss's secretary, seemed to find my discomfort amusing. Sitting at my desk, I reflected on the difficult start to the day, feeling like an object of ridicule both in the workplace and at home. Despite trying to focus, my frustration continued to weigh on me. Having decided to find out more about my father's past, I had only limited information about his place of birth and that he had passed away. After doing research on websites dedicated to the family history of Cambridgeshire, I came across several possible leads. Expecting that my father might have died before my graduation, I narrowed my search to 3 possible options and turned to genealogical forums for more information. When I was lost in thought, my employer Jack called me into his office. Jack, a successful but ethically questionable man, wanted to discuss something with me. Although I was already thinking about leaving because of his actions, his convincing arguments and generous salary forced me to stay. It was then that I found out about his affair with his secretary, Olivia, which was kept secret from his 3rd wife. He mentioned casually that he had heard rumors about my wife's infidelity. Then the conversation turned to business. He stressed the importance of family ties and warned me that if personal matters interfere with work, I may be asked to leave the company. The words were uttered with a severity that reminded me of a teacher scolding a disobedient student. I glanced nervously at Olivia, Jack Walker's impatient secretary, who was standing by the door, presumably ready to gossip with her friends about what had just happened. As I left, I couldn't help but wonder why a young woman like her would get involved with an older man like Jack Walker. Ignoring the giggles directed at me, I hung my head and hurried away. When the door closed behind me, there was laughter, a clear sign that I had become the subject of their fun. As I was returning to my office, it suddenly dawned on me that my presence there no longer mattered to me. I have worked hard to provide for my daughter's education, and only now have I discovered that I am unknowingly financing my wife's infidelity. Despite being content with simple pleasures and not needing excesses, a significant part of my income went to indulging my wife in luxuries, which made me doubt my own happiness. My office, once a haven for creativity and achievements, now seemed filled with emptiness and regret. I created numerous components for this company, which were manufactured and sold. I believed finding another job would be easy. They considered me timid, and they were right. I didn't create problems, it suited me to be an obedient engineer. After looking at the screensaver featuring a family vacation, I opened my email and was surprised to find a message from Jennifer Holmes of the Cambridge Genealogy Committee. After reading the message, I was amazed. Jennifer had seen my query about my father and contacted a woman who introduced herself as his niece, Rachel Murray, my cousin. I quickly replied with my contact details and eagerly awaited Rachel's response. Leaving work brought some relief, and upon returning home, Holly greeted me with a smile and cooked dinner. Despite my initial doubts, I ended up joining her for dinner. Even after spending countless hours supporting our financial commitments and desires, all I received in return was disrespect and ridicule. I reached the point where I drove an old car so she could have a newer one, and she still complained about unmet needs and issued an ultimatum, demanding that I accept her terms or she would start a relationship with a younger man. I decided to mention Henry Walker's name, knowing full well about their connection, which she was surprised to confirm. It turned out that Henry is not just a man but my boss and the future heir to the company. She explained to me the essence of the deal. He would satisfy her in bed, and if I did not agree, she would leave me, and he would fulfill all her other desires. Without saying a word, I got up and left the room, seeking solace in my office. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I longed to get out of this situation. At that moment, the phone rang, and I picked up the receiver. When I heard an unfamiliar voice, it was Rachel. After an hour of talking, I couldn't stop smiling. Rachel was thrilled that I was researching my father's past, and she had a lot of information to share. I found out that my mother actually kicked my father out of the house and hid this secret from me for many years. It was a shock to learn that he died when I was only 11 years old from alcohol poisoning. My grandmother always held my mother responsible for his problems and mental health. Rachel told me that he wanted to resume a relationship with me after he left but couldn't do it. We agreed to meet at her house in Cambridge over the weekend. The days leading up to our meeting seemed long and tedious, with no changes at home and constant ridicule from colleagues at work. Henry and his friends even went so far as to hang a pair of underwear on my office door as a joke. I tried to brush off the negativity and focus on the upcoming meeting with Rachel. Inside the underwear was a note that read, "Please return them to your wife." It broke me that day as I sat at my desk again, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to blame everyone but myself. I couldn't handle it, so when Saturday came, I told Holly that I was going to visit a friend in London. She didn't seem to care. I had a premonition that she would cheat on me, so leaving made it easier for her. The trip to Cambridge was filled with stress, and I ended up arriving at Rachel's house an hour later than planned. To my surprise, she greeted me with the sincerest hugs, showing no signs of worry about the delay. I was introduced to her husband Greg and their children Grace and William, and we quickly struck up a conversation about my father and our newly discovered family ties. Rachel's kind and generous nature manifested itself in the fact that she and Greg talked enthusiastically, often complimenting each other, happily exchanging thoughts and stories about my father and our family. After lunch, we went on a little trip, giving me time for introspection. When we returned, Greg and I had a deep conversation about our work and personal lives, and oddly enough, I felt comfortable opening up to my new cousins. They constantly supported me and urged me not to stop there. When I left Cambridge, I felt clarity again. Despite the deception and mistreatment in the past, the kindness and sincerity shown by my new relatives gave me hope. I realized that I needed to rediscover happiness not only for myself but also for my daughter, friends, and this new family. When I got home at 8 o'clock in the evening, I found Holly getting ready to leave. I asked her about her plans, and she replied that she was going on a date with friends. After surprising her, I started talking about her other lover, Max. She begged me not to mention it. she didn't seem to care about my feelings at all. I begged her to change her mind and stay, just my wife, ignoring my concerns. She declared that she had already become and would always be my wife. She begged me not to deprive her of her pleasure and assured me that she would be back by midnight. Ignoring my protests, she continued to insist, trying to hug me. When I turned away, she picked up her Prada purse and headed for the door. Confirming my authority, I firmly told her not to show her intentions. She hesitated, looked at me questioningly, and then burst into laughter, mocking me, questioning my authority, and confidently stating that I would never have the courage to leave her. Hanging my head, I finally realized that I had been stupid for too long, putting her needs ahead of my own. It became clear that it was time to stop pretending and start making changes. Without hesitation, I immediately took action. I started from the moment when she was walking with Henry, or Max, or maybe both. It seems that this is what she meant when she said that you need to follow your desires and live a better life. As my thoughts became more intense, my anger grew, making it difficult to concentrate. I knew I needed to get rid of any lingering attachment to her, and I think I found a way to do it. I found a box with a picture of my mother and sisters, the only one I had. Despite my doubts, I decided to cut out an image of Holly's face and place it next to them. If I didn't have any feelings left for them, then adding Holly's grinning face to this scene could cut off all the emotional connections I still had. After placing it on the desktop, I completed the task. My short-term plans were mostly thought out, although it could take several weeks to implement them. Fortunately, I had a lot of free time, as Holly did not know about my imminent departure. Despite feeling insecure and needing help by this point, I had already convinced myself of the need to follow my plans. I heard a man clumsily enter the door, and looking out the window, I saw Henry Walker leaving. When I heard her coming up the stairs, I quickly cleared my browsing history and decided to use incognito mode from now on. After she left for our bedroom, I went downstairs to make coffee, thinking about my future without daughters. I found it quite bearable. I went to work determined not to let the negative comments and ridicule affect me. Despite the ridicule, I made an appointment at the bank at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and used that time to analyze my finances. It was a risky move, but with proper help, I hoped everything would go well. The meeting went smoothly, which allowed me to close my savings account and remove my name from our shared account with a decent amount of money on hand. On the way to the office, I stopped at the World of Personal Computers store, where I bought 2 digital voice recorders, a tough drive with a USB interface with a capacity of 500 gigabytes, and a new hard drive for my computer. Back at the office, I started accessing the personal files of the company's clients. It took me an hour to figure out Jack's password, which ironically turned out to be his wife's name and a 6-digit birthday number. Having gained the necessary access, I uploaded all the files to disk, as well as my plans and projects for creating an energy-efficient hydraulic pumping system. This step was aimed at setting up the company for further success. We manufacture pumps for various industries, including air conditioners, heavy equipment, and the dairy industry. After deleting the history and files, I turned off the computer, replaced the hard drive with a new one, packed up, and reinstalled Windows. I spent the rest of the day researching competitors on my phone and searching for engineering jobs in South London and Surrey on the Monster website. In the evening, after a quiet dinner, I went to my office. I came across an interesting vacancy. A major competitor, who faced problems during the financial crisis, was looking for a mechanical engineer to perform basic design work and manage a workshop. Although it wasn't exactly what I dreamed of, it was a step in the right direction. I quickly emailed them my resume. To maintain the appearance of communication with Holly, I decided to sleep in our shared bed that night. When she came, I pretended to be asleep. Her touch made me uncomfortable, but strangely enough, I found satisfaction in such a reaction. I began to feel disgusted with her, which I thought would be good for me in the future. The next day, Robert Williams from Sutton Hydraulics called and expressed his surprise at my possible transfer from Walker Engineering to his small company. He was about to offer me a job, but I asked for an interview the next day, and he agreed. It was another important step forward, and things were moving fast. With enough time left, I started looking for an apartment nearby and found one just 15 minutes from my daughter's house and 5 minutes from work. I signed up for the screening the day after my interview with Robert Williams. Later, I told Jack that I had to go to Kingston the next day to sign some papers for my daughter, and he agreed without further ado. In the evening, I called my old friend Toby Brown to arrange a meeting with him and his wife Sarah the next day after the interview and inspection of the apartment. Toby and Sarah sensed that something was bothering me and were looking forward to my explanation. Before meeting with them, I told my daughters about what was happening, and they supported me and treated me with understanding. When we finally met, I shared with them the first steps in implementing my plans. Their surprise that I decided to stand up for myself was stronger than their dissatisfaction with Holly's infidelity, which they considered a frequent occurrence. Sarah asked about my decision to break up with Holly, pouring me another cup of tea. I told the details of the conversation with my cousins, including that my father was kicked out of the house by my mother and sisters who were on her side. I mentioned in my story that my daughters supported me and wondered if the revelations at the meeting gave me the courage to stand up for myself. I explained that when I visited my father's grave, I noticed something on the tombstone that surprised me and made me decide to leave. They both asked at the same time what I saw, and I told them that on the memorial stone there was an image of a rose with the inscription "in loving memory" and then the date of birth of my father and his age at the time of death, which coincided with my current age. They shuddered slightly, indicating that they understood everything. I told them about the decision I had to make when faced with a situation that could lead to destructive behavior, just as my grandmother had warned. Instead of following in my father's footsteps, I decided to stand up for myself. I admitted that I was no longer ready to tolerate mistreatment and ridicule in an attempt to become the perfect husband. It was a vulnerable moment for me when I confessed to my friends how far I had come. Sarah offered her support and shared a strategy on how to protect myself and take revenge on Holly. Speaking about my financial plan, I mentioned that back in the year 2000, I opened a separate savings account where I saved all my bonuses and extra money. This made it easier for me to get a mortgage loan in my name only. I also talked in detail about how Toby participated in the transfer of ownership of my house to a new company through the land registry. Toby expressed doubt about this plan, but I assured him that Holly would not be able to challenge it. I explained that her religious parents, upon learning of her infidelity, would put their beliefs above helping her. They agreed and even offered to help cover the mortgage, allowing me to delay the payment. On the way back, I stopped at the nearest Land Rover dealership and successfully exchanged her car for the newest model. We canceled the payment plan for the Range Rover Sport she owned, allowing the dealership to benefit from its resale. I assured the dealer that I would return for my upgrade, confident that they would be able to refund the cost of Holly's car by selling it as almost new. I apologized for the inconvenience but explained that the opportunity to sell me a new expensive Range Rover would compensate them. When I left, I took with me a brochure from the year 2016, not for myself, but for Holly. When she returned home, she settled into the living room with coffee in her hand and a pale complexion. I dusted off my jacket and casually dropped my bag on the floor, ready to put the second phase of my plan into action. I confessed my love to Holly and wished her only the best. I announced my intention to exchange her current car for a brand new model 2017, pointing to it in the brochure. Holly, caught off guard, enthusiastically confessed her love for the new car, unaware of my ulterior motive. She offered to take her to the dealership on Friday afternoon and even took time off from work early to help. Unexpectedly, I suggested that she use my car on the weekend to visit her lovers, but she seemed shocked by my latest statement. Shock and confusion showed on her face, and I asked what was the matter. She didn't say anything specific but asked if I was upset about our arrangement. I explained that this was not our agreement, but hers, stressing that I had no right to vote on this issue. I asked if I had no choice but to agree and waited for her to respond. She just nodded as if confirming her authority, and I gave up. Despite everything, she confessed her love to me. I didn't say anything and went to the kitchen when the phone rang. I went out to the backyard to answer the call. After Toby confirmed that the money had been transferred, I was ready to start work the next day. Wasting no time, I arrived at the bank and was directed to the office of a mortgage specialist. Within an hour, the mortgage was paid off and all my accounts were closed. Then I went to another bank a few doors down to open a new account. I felt safe knowing that I wouldn't have to make any more payments if Holly didn't sue. The next day, I applied to the land registry to submit the necessary online application. 10 minutes after applying for a new company, I received an email confirmation stating that the process would take 3 to 5 days. In the end, all I had to do was hand over the documents to Toby so that he could register the property in the name of his company. That same day, I knocked on Jack's door and found Olivia at his house, as usual. It was Friday, the day Jack usually spent with Olivia, and I couldn't help feeling like I'd interrupted their usual routine. "I'm gone," I put my resignation letter on his desk, and he looked at me with a smug expression on his face. Curiously examining the paper in my hands, he asked what it was. I informed him that this was my resignation letter and said that given the circumstances prevailing in our families, the ideal option would be to leave immediately. I hinted that he might prefer that I didn't stay here too long. He looked shocked by the news. Confidently, I asked him to prepare my calculation for Monday and stressed that it was important that he did not inform Holly's friends about my departure. He begged me not to leave, claiming that they would not be able to function without me. I noted that they seemed to rely more on his nephew. I said I'd be back on Monday to pack the rest of my things. Casually dropping a pin from my pocket, I took a digital voice recorder out of my sock and discreetly inserted it into the wooden frame. Where our conversation came to an end, I mentioned that I had other obligations and left his office. Before I left, I couldn't resist teasing him, warning him not to come asking for help if he ever found himself in a difficult financial situation. I hinted that the only reason his unfaithful wife stayed with him was his wealth, and I could tell by the look on his face that my words had struck a chord with him. Smiling with satisfaction, I left his office. An hour later, I drove home, picked up Holly's car and the registration log, and handed it over to the dealership, where they gladly helped me. When I returned home in the evening, I found Holly sitting at the kitchen table with noticeable dark circles under her eyes. It was obvious that she had been crying. Worried, I asked what happened. After some hesitation, she told me that she had contracted mononucleosis. Instead of responding sympathetically, I couldn't help but laugh in response. Holly shot me a stern look. I advised her to take the necessary medications for her recovery, and the atmosphere between us became tense. Surprisingly, that night I slept soundly for the first time in months. I was sleeping in a spare room and woke up refreshed. The quiet night had a beneficial effect on me. Back in our bedroom, I gently woke Holly up and told her that I wanted to give her time to rest and recover. Holly confided in me, expressing her fear that I found her disgusting. I was silent, watching the tears roll down her face, admitting that she had made a big mistake. Then she surprised me by professing her love for me and wishing me well. At that moment, I realized that I no longer felt love for the woman I had been married to for 21 years. I was surprised how quickly attachment can disappear. I decided it was over, and nothing in her situation could change that. Silently, I left the room, got into the car, and drove away without looking back. That evening, I stayed with Toby and Sarah, who were having a dinner party with friends and colleagues. When I returned home the next morning, I found Holly busy with household chores. When I entered the living room, she hurried to me and hugged me. As soon as she noticed, I patted her back gently in response. Impatiently, I offered to arrange the delivery of a new car, volunteering to take it to the city to my sister, who would then take it to the dealership. I imagined her returning in a brand new Range Rover and walking towards me with her arms outstretched, grinning. I turned my attention to the kettle, pretending not to notice her advances. Throughout the day, Holly showered me with excessive caresses, which made me feel uncomfortable. She repeatedly tried to kiss or hug me, but I constantly found excuses to avoid it. As I was getting ready for bed, I noticed that she was crying again. When I wished her good night, she asked if I would sleep with her and expressed a desire to hug and comfort her. I didn't feel any connection and told her that it would only happen after she got permission from the doctor. I firmly reminded her that she had created this situation herself, to which she bitterly replied that as soon as she recovered, she was sure that she would be able to find a man who would be ready to go to bed with her. She decided she had to make up for lost time. I laughed softly, looking around the room. It took longer than I expected, but here it is, the familiar rigor has returned. The regrets of Friday night disappeared, replaced by decades of accumulated resentment. In the past, I would have succumbed to her manipulations, but not this time. Ignoring her tears, I headed for the spare room. This would be my last night in this house, and I would spend it in the spare room. Her words brought me relief, dispelling any doubts that still remained. When I looked at the fake photo of her and my sisters, I only felt hostility towards her. She was kind only when it suited her purposes and became violent when things didn't go according to her script. The next morning, I woke up early to take Holly to the hairdresser's appointment at 8:30 a.m., as we had agreed. As I drove away, I couldn't help but think that this might be the last time I'd see her. Despite my misgivings, I firmly decided that this would be the case. On the way, I called the mobile phone company and terminated both of our contracts. I found a parking lot where I could stay and paid the fine with a card. The company confirmed that the phones would be working until 5 o'clock in the evening, which was just in time. After that, I went to the office to collect the payment. When I entered the territory of the enterprise, I felt a gloomy atmosphere. It seemed that the news of my departure had already spread, and my colleagues looked at me with apprehension. Puzzled by their reaction, I walked down the hall to my office, passing the usual group gathered at the coffee maker. I wasn't sure if Max and Henry knew that the two of them were having an affair with my wife, but they smiled at me and joked with others. I forced myself to greet them joyfully, saying good morning. They asked about my wife, which led to a typical laugh at the ongoing joke, which I found funny. I replied that she was not all right, assuming that one of them had given her an unwanted surprise. I left them speechless, their jaws dropped in surprise. When I went upstairs, Olivia greeted me with a hesitant smile, a subtle sign of respect. No sooner had I knocked than Jack appeared at the door, confidently handed me everything I needed, and then bluntly told me to leave. Perhaps such respect was just my imagination. When I entered his office, I sat down and discreetly put the recorder in my pocket. From under the chair, I knew about his regular Friday meetings with Olivia, and now I had proof of that. He attacked me, asking if I had found another job. Ignoring him at first, I eventually admitted that I hadn't found another position yet. A smug smile appeared on his face. Apparently, he decided that I would beg him to come back. Then I asked about my salary for the last month and about the bonus at the end of the year, to which he burst out laughing. Olivia came in holding my check, and when she asked what was funny, Jack told her that I had asked for a bonus and salary, which he thought was funny. Olivia joined in the laughter, feeling the need to join in. I laughed too, making them stop and look at me in disbelief. Olivia asked why I was laughing, and I replied that I was asking why she was letting this old man use her every week. My laughter grew louder, causing them to freeze. Olivia widened her eyes, and Jack blushed with anger. Faced with Jack's fury, he burst into insults, calling me a scoundrel and demanding that I leave his office and company before his guys forcibly took me out. Emboldened, I left, taking the remaining things from my workplace with a smile on my face. I returned home, unloaded the back seats of my car, opened the trunk, and entered the house. Looking around the rooms, I thought about what to take with me. After selecting several Romero Brito works, I carefully wrapped them in plastic in the garage and then put them in the car. I packed various things around the house and put my wardrobe in order. I did not forget to take important documents from the safe, such as a birth certificate and a marriage certificate. Using the attic ladder, I took out my old things, such as my diploma and family photos. In the master bedroom, I collected all the jewelry that Holly had given me over the years. Their cost was more than 10,000 pounds. I packed all the handbags, shoes, and expensive coats. Actually, the whole wardrobe belonged to me, so I took everything. I kept detailed records for insurance, which will be useful when selling. When I finished packing, I remembered that I needed a TV and added it to my load. Along with a collection of movies and a Blu-ray player, by this point my car was completely full. I decided to get rid of all of Holly's clothes as well as several other unnecessary items, including my own old clothes. I knew that I would need a new wardrobe, and the girls were ready to help me. I carefully selected the best photos of me and the girls and packed them in the car, taking my time. Since Holly wouldn't be back until after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I allowed myself to enjoy a cup of tea. I took care of disabling the satellite phone and internet at the TV company, and also contacted British Gas and Southern Water companies to cancel utilities. I wasn't worried that it would take a few days. I went back to the bedroom and settled down on the bed, and then I saw something that gave me an idea that made even me wary. At the very top of the closet in an old dusty box was Holly's wedding dress. She loved that dress, maybe even more than she loved me. I took it out of the closet and came across our wedding album among the pile of photos on the bed. Quickly grabbing the duvet cover, I packed up all my things and went to the garden. I put everything in a pile, including Holly's clothes and the things I couldn't sell. I left her underwear untouched, not wanting it to remind me of her. After closing the car, I checked the time and called Robert Williams to say that I would drop off the documents later during the night shift and I wanted to start from scratch the next day. He looked pleased, and I hoped I made his day a little brighter. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I sat and waited for the call. Then I found paint thinner in the garage and poured it on the wedding dress in the garden. Just as I was preparing to light the fire, the phone suddenly rang. I calmly picked up the phone, but I heard Holly's urgent voice on the other end, demanding to know what was going on. After answering with a note of sarcasm, I asked her to clarify her question. Unable to calm down, Holly insisted that I stopped pretending to be a fool and continued to get answers from me. I advised her to relax and asked about the situation. After a moment of silence, I heard her heavy breathing and the faint voice of her sister in the background. She said that she was told that I did not buy her a new car but sold the old one. I jokingly admitted that I might not have mentioned this detail. It made her worry and think about what was going on. Keeping my composure even though my heart was pounding, I calmly informed her that from now on she would have to buy a car herself if she needed one. This made her cry out in confusion and disappointment. I repeated that she had heard me perfectly and added that I needed to clean up the kitchen. While she was doubting if it was a sick joke, I was silent. She insisted that we discuss it when she got home, clearly upset that she was being played. Ignoring her screams, I stopped talking and went outside, lighting a match. I watched our history burn to ashes. After tearing the marriage certificate to shreds and leaving the only picture of us at Disneyland on the table, I walked away from our past. I couldn't help but wonder if she remembers those moments with nostalgia. I got in the car and drove away. When I reached the end of the street, I caught a glimpse of Holly and Jennifer rushing into the house without looking back. I smiled to myself, turned off the phone, and continued on my way. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I arrived in Sutton. Realizing that I had free time, I went to the nearest phone store to sign a new mobile phone contract. After talking to the administrative team for paperwork, I met Freya, my new secretary, who demonstrated a level of professionalism that surpassed Olivia's despite her young age. Back in my quiet apartment, I brewed a cup of tea using a kettle borrowed from home. After unpacking, I decided to order pizza for dinner. After checking my old phone, I found that it was disconnected. A mischievous smile appeared on my face when I realized that Holly was now also without a phone. I spread out my sleeping bag in the living room, looking forward to dinner. The furniture was supposed to be delivered over the weekend. Turning on my laptop, I opened the notes from Jack Walker's office, which talked about his affair with Olivia. After transferring the evidence to USB drives, I prepared to send copies to Jack's wife Margaret and Olivia's boyfriend Peter. I planned to mail them the next day. After that, I called my daughter and told her the latest news, advising her not to tell her mother where I was. Over the next week, I set up my apartment and started referring clients from Walker Engineering to Sutton. Although some customers remained loyal to Jack, many preferred our services to his, which caused Walker Engineering to suffer. I knew Jack would eventually figure out why his business was failing, but I didn't care. When the utilities were turned off in my old house, Holly sorting out the bills soon noticed my absence. Toby took the initiative to sell the house, enlisting Sarah's support, and by the end of the week, there were ads on the site. Meanwhile, Eva contacted me and informed me that Holly had returned to her parents, who were unhappy with her infidelity. Holly was furious, which oddly enough suited me, although I realized that the drama was far from over. The following Sunday brought good news. Just a week after being put up for sale, I received 2 solid offers worth £550,000 sterling. I quickly accepted one of them and proceeded to finalize the deal, giving Toby fair compensation and setting aside some of the proceeds for my own safety. A week later, Toby's message that the sale was progressing quickly made me happy. Wasting no time, I contacted a garbage collection company to clear out my old house. At the same time, the girls contacted their mother, who reacted with anger and threats. I assured the girls that the chaos would end soon and suggested they calm down. On Tuesday morning, while chatting with a new client, I learned about the plight of Walker Engineering. The client said that the company was forced to reduce staff, laying off half of the employees due to a decrease in the number of projects. On top of that, Mrs. Walker decided to divorce Jack because of his infidelity. Despite this news, I couldn't express any sympathy, as my mind was busy calculating the commissions. Although I didn't know what happened to Olivia and her boyfriend, I knew that he had received the gift I sent. The reason for Mrs. Walker's impending divorce from her husband was unmistakably clear. As a token of appreciation for my hard work, I was presented with a brand new Land Rover Discovery HSE. Although I had previously thought about paying for it myself, Robert and the company's executives were so impressed with my work and the company's success that they gave me an impressive bonus of more than £30,000. Looking out of my office window, I was surprised to see a Ford Focus pulling into the parking lot. I soon realized that it belonged to Diana, Holly's mother. Expecting a confrontation, I was already preparing when the phone rang in my office. My secretary informed me that there was a woman in the waiting room who called herself my wife. I asked her to tell her that I was in a meeting and would be back in an hour. A few hours later, I looked out the window and saw that she was still waiting. I sighed and decided to leave for the night, ready to meet her face to face if necessary or leave if she didn't notice me. I went out the side door and headed for my car. As I was about to get into the car, the sound of screeching tires caught my attention. Suddenly, she blocked my way with her car. When she got out of the car, she rushed towards me, clearly furious and looking disheveled. It was obvious that she was upset, dressed in worn clothes that seemed to belong to her sister. Her disheveled hair only complemented her disheveled appearance. "You're a damn idiot," she screamed, trying to slap me but missing the target. Inflamed with anger, she demanded retribution. I urged her to calm down and offered to get in the car with me. Surprised by the new car, she told me about her financial difficulties and begged me to come back. I told her that I felt useless in her life because I couldn't satisfy her needs the way her young lovers did. She begged me to come home, expressing her willingness to move forward and forgive me. I was at a loss and asked if she was joking. She confirmed that she forgave me for destroying her things and wreaking havoc in her life. Doubting her forgiveness, I remembered her infidelity, lack of respect, and the courage to say that she forgave me. I made it clear that I would never reconcile with her and in an icy tone suggested that she go to one of her lovers. She mentioned that her friends began to treat her differently when we stopped being together, and now their husbands doubt their loyalty. Although I recognized that she bore some responsibility for the difficulties she faced, I still felt sorry for her. She acknowledged the consequences of her choice and admitted that her own greed and lack of respect had led to her downfall. Despite her pleas for reconciliation, I knew I had to focus on my own well-being. She begged me to come back to her, insisting that she had nothing left without me. She also raised the topic of her share in the house and the need for a divorce. I reminded her that she had never expressed love for me but only desired my presence. I confessed that I had not made mortgage payments and eventually lost our house. Admitting my dishonesty, she was visibly stunned by my revelation, and I realized that she had come to discuss our future. Despite her desperate pleas and declarations of love for me, I made it clear to her that I wanted a divorce. After more than 2 decades of marriage, she begged for forgiveness, admitting her mistake and promising to accept any consequences. I repeated that her action was a serious and irreparable mistake and firmly stated that I did not intend to reconcile with her. Her screams and pleas filled the car while I proposed a solution, a clean break with the payment of £30,000 in cash. Her demeanor changed, becoming resolute and firm. She threatened to sue me, insisting that she would not leave empty-handed because she believed that I had not lost my home and was too smart for that. Realizing she was right, I went on the defensive, firmly stating that she would not receive a penny from me. She met me face to face, and I made it clear to her that I was ready to fight with her for everything and even more. I confidently stated that she did not have access to my finances and I would take measures to make it difficult for her to find them. I warned her that by the time her lawyer discovered something, the legal costs would outweigh any potential benefit. I suggested that she accept the money offered or prepare for a legal dispute. While maintaining motionless eye contact, she burst out in anger, professing her love and at the same time accusing me of being unfairly treated. She insisted that our daughters would thrive because of her, emphasizing their future successes as opposed to her own perceived shortcomings. I urged her to accept the money and get out of my life, and she reluctantly agreed, agreeing to accept the payment and move forward with the divorce. I assured her that I would handle everything, and she ran out of my car, slamming the door behind her. A moment later, she pulled out of the parking lot. The next day, I started the divorce process, citing her infidelity as the reason. A week later, I set up a meeting with Holly at the girl's apartment. Despite the fact that my house was sold, I decided to wait until all the paperwork was completed before making any investments. It was hard to be polite in front of the girls. I handed Holly the money, and she started signing the papers. After saying goodbye to the girls and wishing Holly well, I got ready to leave. Suddenly, Holly burst into tears, but it seemed to me that it was more specifically for the girls. When we met, Eva started talking about the upcoming Coldplay concert, planning to see me next weekend. When I returned to the room, Holly was still crying, but no one seemed to notice. Then it dawned on me what Eva meant when she talked about the concert. Ignoring Holly's sobs, I closed the door behind me and left. It shouldn't have been that easy, but it was almost unexpectedly simple. If she had known it would be so easy, she might have tried to do it much earlier. Story 2. Alex stretched out luxuriously on her lover's bed, then got up and went to the bathroom. She turned on the shower, adjusted the temperature, and went inside. After thoroughly lathering up, just as she was about to turn off the water, Trail entered the room, prompting her to stop. 15 minutes later, the couple was ready to leave. When the man bent down for a kiss, the woman deftly dodged him to keep the lipstick on her newly painted lips. "Let's stick to the plan first, and then we can indulge in pleasure as much as we want," she warned him. "I'm sorry, you're right," he replied. "It's just impossible to resist your lips," the man remarked, causing the woman to smile radiantly. During the first month, this aspect of her life developed exactly as she imagined. She had expected nothing less and hoped that this would continue for a long time. Although someone might have called Alex and Trail's actions on Wednesday afternoon an affair, she considered the term too harsh and rude for their relationship. Alex considers her relationship with Trail not just an illicit affair, but true love. Alex Temple wasn't looking for love when she unexpectedly found it once again after 12 years of a happy marriage to Chris Temple. She met Trail Lamb at a board meeting at Parkfield Hospital 4 months earlier. Alex holds the position of HR director at Parkfield, and Trail is the new marketing representative at Riley Gordon, the hospital's public relations company. Trail appeared in a charcoal gray striped suit that emphasized his athletic height. His brown wavy hair was thick, and his big brown eyes sparkled when he spoke. When he met my gaze, my legs began to tremble. As they talked over the following months, Alex gradually realized that her feelings for Trail went deeper than just a superficial attraction. To call their relationship an affair would be inaccurate. She doesn't need to apologize or feel guilty about this relationship. On Saturday afternoon, Chris Temple took a handful of letters and various correspondences from the mailbox that had been dropped off earlier that day. Among them were 2 envelopes from the state of Indiana containing license plate stickers and printed registration documents for the year 2023. Chris applied a new sticker to his license plate and placed the registration documents in the glove compartment of his car. He then opened the envelope addressed to his wife, applied a new sticker to her license plate, and attempted to stash the registration documents in the glove compartment, only to find it locked. Confused, Chris exclaimed, "Who locks the glove compartment?" He returned to the house, retrieved his wife's car keys from the shelf, unlocked the glove compartment, and placed the new registration documents inside. As he was about to leave, a playful thought struck him, prompting Chris to reopen the glove compartment. To his surprise, he found the car's operating manual, 3 recent registrations, and a cell phone. The presence of the cell phone caught him off guard. "Damn," he muttered to himself. Chris knew his wife had been upstairs showering, a routine she'd maintained for the last 6 months after returning early Saturday mornings from her workout. Curious, he powered on the phone and waited for it to fully load, then checked the call history. Since she hadn't expected anyone to find her phone, she hadn't cleared the call history. There were only a few calls, but numerous messages from someone named Trail Lamb. Without delving into the content of the messages, Chris returned the phone to the glove compartment, securing it inside. He hung his wife's keys back on the hook, pausing to listen. He could still hear the shower running upstairs. Chris decided to go outside to mow the yard, hoping to clear his head from the recent discoveries. As he pushed the lawnmower, thoughts raced through his mind. He realized his wife had been involved in a long-term affair with Trail Lane for almost a year now. It dawned on him that her late nights at the office, which started around the same time, were likely cover for their liaisons. Perhaps she took extended lunch breaks and worked late to accommodate secret meetings. About 6 months ago, based on their correspondence, they began adding Saturdays to their clandestine routine. Chris remembered this coincided with his wife starting gym classes. Tears welled up in Chris's eyes as he gripped the mower's handle tightly. Meanwhile, upstairs on the second floor, Alex smiled upon hearing the familiar sound of the lawn mower. She knew Chris enjoyed tending to the yard, finding both physical activity and satisfaction in maintaining their lawn. As she dressed, preparing to enjoy the rest of her day, Alex reflected on how fortunate she felt to have a devoted husband and a passionate lover. It had been nearly a year since she introduced Trail into her intimate life, and everything was proceeding exactly as she'd envisioned. Thanks to meticulous planning and organization, her life had never felt more fulfilling. She had a loving husband, 2 wonderful children, and a successful career. Trail, her 29-year-old lover, filled the emotional and physical void she believed existed in her marriage. Alex was content with herself, despite occasional moments of doubt. She was convinced she was living life to the fullest by engaging in an extramarital affair. She didn't view it as an easy way out, but rather as a way to enrich her life. On this particular day, she felt truly alive, having intimate relationships with 2 different men. She found intense pleasure in her encounters with Trail during the day, ensuring to shower and tidy herself afterward, anticipating intimacy with Chris later in the evening. She took precautions so that her husband would not find out about her previous sexual adventures. She took the initiative to pursue what was happening and derive additional excitement from her own bold actions. Unlike simple physical attraction, Alex and Trail were united by a sincere love for each other. The young man was not only warm and intelligent, but his unique interests brought a sense of satisfaction into her life. TR realized from the very beginning that she was married and deeply loved her husband, but there was enough room in her heart to accept him as well for physical intimacy. TR, being 13 years younger than her husband, had a stronger will and physique with pronounced abs and extra muscles. The dynamics of intimate relationships with each of the men were different, with Chris slow and gentle, and with Trail energetic and physically intense. But that Saturday, Alex failed to make love to both men, as Chris left due to fatigue. She couldn't help but notice that he looked a little disheveled when he entered the house after working in the yard. Despite this, Chris felt relieved that he didn't feel sick when she tried to initiate intimacy lying next to Alex. He reflected on how many times his wife had given him what some would call sloppy seconds. Chris held the position of vice president of finance at a medium-sized tool and die manufacturing company. Every morning, he came to work at 7 sharp, put a capsule in the Keurig coffee maker, and checked email messages. Officially, the plant started work at 8 a.m. By 8:15 a.m., Chris entered the office of production supervisor Bob Casey, a close friend who had ended his 15-year marriage 5 years ago. "Do you have a minute for a personal matter, Bob?" Chris asked, receiving a nod from Bob. He entered the office and closed the door behind him. Bob couldn't shake the feeling of foreboding. 5 minutes later, Chris told Bob the whole situation, and Bob immediately contacted his divorce lawyer, an old college acquaintance. On the same day, Bob's lawyer made time for Chris in his office outside of the usual schedule. The following Wednesday, Alex was stunned when she was handed divorce papers at the hospital after returning from a date with Trail. She had not paid attention to her husband's dissatisfaction with their marriage and did not catch the irony that the papers were delivered on time. While she tried to figure out the situation, the thought of Chris finding out about her affair with Trail didn't even cross her mind. When she came to, Alex dialed her husband's number through her tears and asked, "Why? Why? What did I do wrong?" Chris replied sharply, "Seriously? Are you still asking? You've been having an affair for almost a year now, and you can't understand why I want to get divorced?" Alex was stunned for the second time in a few minutes, still sobbing. "What exactly am I destroying?" Chris shouted. "I wasn't looking for this relationship, Alex. It just happened, and I'm grateful for that. TR is a wonderful person. When you get to know him better, you'll understand that this goes beyond simple infidelity. It goes beyond physical intimacy, beyond lust. I love him as deeply as I love you. But we're married. You can't love two men at the same time, Chris protested. Yes, I can. The fact that we are married does not mean that I can turn off my feelings, turn off love. You are my first love, he is my second. I am capable of loving several people at the same time. It's not a matter of choosing one over the other, Alex explained. TR understands that my life is already full. He accepts the little time I can offer him. You and the family get most of my time, as you should. I'm not taking anything away from you and the children. I just added something for myself, besides you and the kids. TR may not be your spouse, but he plays an important role in my life. He should appreciate any time he gets from me. But I'm your husband, and we have 2 children. All the time should be devoted to us, Chris objected. I appreciate my current life and don't want to change anything. I need all of you, Alex said. I don't want to get divorced, but I also didn't want my wife to have intimacy with another man, Chris complained. I think we don't always get everything we want, Chris said. Do you remember our wedding vows, to love, honor, and cherish? How does a relationship with another man align with love, reverence, or respect for me? You talk about it like that, dirty, disgusting. I don't think so from my point of view. Of course, it is, Chris objected. Alex growled in frustration. The argument ended when the 2 children came down the stairs to greet their father. Both parents knew that their children had overheard a heated argument. The children, Josh and Kayla, looked visibly worried. I'm sorry you had to witness this, Chris said. In the future, we will try to behave more like adults, but it's true we're heading for a divorce. We both still love you both, and my mom and I parting has nothing to do with you, Chris added. There will be no divorce, Alex said firmly. You shouldn't be so selfish as to ruin your life because of what happened, Chris added. He won't ruin your life because he didn't betray you, she clarified. Mom, you cheated on Dad. How could you? Kayla exclaimed. Alex frowned and looked at her daughter, then at her husband. Be careful what you say, Kayla. I'm still your mother, Alex replied. Only because I can't divorce you, the girl shouted back and rushed upstairs to her room. Well, that was nice, Chris remarked to no one. I think we should have a family meeting during dinner. Josh, go get your sister so we can discuss everything, he ordered. When Alex sat down at the table and found herself face to face with 3 other members of her family, they openly talked about her infidelity and the impending divorce. He informed the children that he intended to seek joint custody of them instead of giving Alex full custody. You can't take the kids away from me, Chris, she screamed. I'm not taking them away, but you won't have primary custody either. You can't betray me and reduce my role to that of a weekend dad, he said. So, who's the man you're dating behind your father's back? Josh asked. This is an inappropriate question, young man, Alex began. I think it's quite appropriate, Chris chimed in. Kids deserve to know the truth no matter what. He took the time to reveal to the children all the information about Trailing that he had collected over the past week. Alex was stunned that her husband knew so much about her lover. Chris knew how to surprise her and couldn't resist sharing his discoveries with their children. During this exchange, Alex did not take her eyes off her plate. There will be no divorce, children. I just need to help your father look at things from the right perspective, Alex said, clearing the table and going into the kitchen. Both children turned to Chris, who just shrugged. They understood their father well enough to realize that he would not put up with his wife's infidelity. When dinner was over, the kids went to their rooms, and Josh said, We're here for you, Dad. We'll talk, but it's better not to come under fire, if you understand what I'm talking about. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it, Chris replied gratefully. After dinner, the family usually gathered in the living room to watch a movie or TV show, unless the children had homework. Alex was apparently engrossed in a book in the living room, while Chris settled into the common room to watch the Jeopardy! Show. He couldn't help but smile when he realized that Alex hadn't picked up a book in months. Alex sat in the living room and fought back tears, lost in thought, turning the pages of the book from time to time to create the illusion of reading. Just 6 hours ago, she thought her life was perfect. Now, she realized that her marriage was on the verge of collapse. If she couldn't communicate her desires and needs to her husband, her ideal life would collapse. Chris imagined the relationship with Trail as low and vulgar, which was in stark contrast to how Alex perceived it. Although her husband was a decent man, perhaps even wonderful, he was not without flaws and vulnerabilities. TR's presence in her life helped to eliminate these shortcomings, and their closeness was an expression of their affection, not just physical desire. Well, for the most part, she agreed. She hid her relationship with Trail from Chris, knowing full well that her husband would not approve of them. But now that he had found out the truth, that relationship seemed spoiled to her. Alex believed that she had carefully thought out every detail to hide her affair with Trail. She thought through all the aspects, even the fact that their physical intimacy remained the same as before, without increasing or decreasing in frequency and intensity. She was racking her brain trying to figure out how her forgetful husband suddenly found out the truth. Up to this point, Alex considered herself a more discerning partner. She successfully hid her relationship with Trail for almost a year, which further strengthened her self-esteem. The first time Chris made love to her shortly after the trial only increased her arousal and strengthened her sense of superiority. Trail seemed pleased with the state of their relationship despite the fact that Alex was 13 years older than him. She had a young build, an attractive face, and radiated intelligence and charisma. He was shocked by how quickly he managed to seduce this seemingly contented married woman. She made it clear that she needed more than just physical intimacy and did not intend to replace her husband. Trail found this state of affairs ideal, enjoying the freedom of his bachelor status. The only condition he offered was to extend their weekly dates for another day. Alex hesitated at first, but after a month, she readily agreed and began going on dates with Trail on Saturdays during lunch at the secluded restaurant where they often dined. Trail pretended to sympathize with Alex's predicament. She contacted the young man to arrange a meeting shortly after she arrived at her office. To be honest, Alex, if you had divorced, we would have had more time to communicate. It wouldn't be a negative for me, Trail remarked, taking a bite of his sandwich. But I understand that you don't want to get divorced. Maybe we should really put an end to it? I hope not. I hope I can convince him to understand my point of view, Alex said. He's always been reasonable, and I'm sure he still cares about me. If I can get through to his sense of justice, Trail chimed in. If it were up to me, I wouldn't want to lose a single piece of you, Alex replied. Because he loves me and I just need to convey to him that maintaining the current situation brings me joy and does not interfere with our love for each other. But until I can convince him otherwise, I think we should wait. I don't think it will help if I demonstrate it in front of him, she said. Chris wasn't surprised when Alex didn't show up for the session on Saturday morning. He understood that she was wise enough to keep some distance, at least visually, from her relationship with Trail. Nevertheless, he felt obliged to provoke her to retaliate at the moment. You might as well go to your lover, baby. I have already started the divorce process and I'm not going to reconsider this decision, Chris said as he and Alex sat in the living room and their children played outside. Just because you applied doesn't mean you can't change your mind, dear, she remarked. Do you love me and the children more or less than I do? She asked sharply, catching him off guard. Alex watched the gears turn in his head, searching for the right answer. I love all of you equally, but in different ways, you understand that, he replied. What are you getting at? Chris asked. I want to say that a person can love several people on different levels. They are both different and similar at the same time, she explained. I love you, the kids, and Trail equally, but at the same time, in my own way. I can't stop loving any of you. I love you, Chris, and I rely on you. You are my husband and the father of our children, so you take up most of my time. But I also love Trail, although in a different way, but at the same time as my love for you. But since he is not a member of our family, he has to make do with a smaller share of my time. Although he wants more, he has accepted this state of affairs. If you really loved me as much as you claim, you would graciously acknowledge your main role and find satisfaction in it for yourself and for me, she said. But you stubbornly refuse to admit the obvious, Alex, Chris remarked. Trail is not a member of our family, so his love cannot compare to the one we share with the children. He also shouldn't play a secondary role in our family, Alex objected. Family is defined by us, she continued. I want to include him in our family. I am fulfilling my duties as a devoted wife and mother. If you really love me as much as you claim, you could give him this lesser position. But I can't. I won't let you seek affection outside of our family. And just so you know, my love for you has decreased compared to what it was 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, you can't stop loving someone overnight, but your blatant disrespect for me over the past year has greatly weakened my feelings for you, Chris said. I didn't disrespect you, Chris. I love you as much as ever, Alex said. Then you must not love me as much as I love you, otherwise you wouldn't have a lover, Chris replied. He's more than a lover, he's like a second husband, she explained. Younger husband, I see, Chris muttered. Chris slept on the couch in the living room every night despite his wife's constant requests to return to their bedroom. We can't talk properly unless we're in the same bedroom at night, she said. Alex's eyes widened during their first meeting with the lawyers when Chris's lawyer brought up the topic of selling the house and dividing the property. You can't be serious. I don't want to get divorced, Alex said. Well, it's inevitable. So get ready. We'll have to sell the house to buy something more spacious than a storage room, Chris said. Okay, you've won, Alex practically shouted. I'll kill him, I swear. As if I can trust your promises. You've broken our vows without a problem. I don't see why I should believe your assurances. You'll just find a way to avoid getting caught and fool me again, Chris remarked. It's not about winning, silly. I lost. Only our children suffer, Alex confessed, hanging her head in shame. What if I let you have some fun? Will this fix everything? She asked. You just don't understand, Alex. I wanted it to be just you and me, Chris said, depressed. Chris felt remorse when a week later his relatives asked about the reason for his divorce from his daughter, believing that Alex, as their daughter, was obliged to inform them about this. He refrained from answering. Chris had always maintained a close bond with Alex's parents, calling them mom and dad as well as his own parents. I'm sorry, guys, he said gloomily. I thought Alex would tell you about it. You know what they say about assumptions. His father-in-law, after learning from Chris about their daughter's relationship with Trail, reacted with surprise. Are you sure, son? It's not like my daughter, George Taylor said incredulously. Well, it's not exactly what you think, George. She cares about both of them and doesn't want to get divorced, Velma Taylor said. They were both shocked. What's going on here, Velma? George exclaimed. What do you mean she's decent, George? You'd approve of him. She's not cheating on him, she loves them both, Velma explained. What do you mean, Velma? Explain everything quickly and clearly. Otherwise, it may lead to a second divorce, George warned. It turned out that Chris's mother-in-law was aware of Alex's infidelity, but she continued to claim that it wasn't cheating because her daughter cares about both men. This is not treason, this is polyandry, Velma said confidently. If it's polyandry, then why don't I have a relationship with someone else? And why do I seem to be the last one to find out about this agreement? Chris asked. Well, apparently both you and Dad, Velma added. She cheated on Chris, and you didn't say anything. I have to give you credit, George remarked. I'm really sorry, son. He's a decent man, George. You'll understand when you get to know him better. Shall we get to know each other better? I don't want to meet my daughter's boyfriend if he really was a decent man, George said. Thanks for understanding, Dad, Chris confessed. After his divorce from Alex, Trail restrained his glee, maintaining a facade of concern, but internally wanting to rejoice after a year of longing for more time spent with his wife. His wish came true. Alex and Chris took turns with the children every 2 weeks. At first, Alex tried to avoid Trail during the weeks when Chris had the kids, but after a week of tears, she begged to spend time with Trail. Next week, when Chris had the kids on the first Monday, when Alex stayed overnight, Trail cooked dinner and dessert for the first time in their life together. Trail ordered food at his favorite Italian restaurant and everything was ready when Alex returned home from work. Wow, candles and all that. That's incredibly thoughtful, Trail, Alex remarked. Throughout the dinner, Trail played Alex's favorite classical music on the stereo. She looked at the young man admiringly, silently noticing that her ex-husband loved only classic rock. Her smile widened even more when, after eating, he gently lifted her in his arms and spun her around in a slow dance to several tunes. Refreshed, they retired to Trail's bedroom, where they indulged in intimacy for the rest of the night. Starting with gentle gestures and moving on to more passionate encounters, Alex was sure that their evening in the bedroom was one of the most enjoyable in her life. Maybe the divorce won't be as bad as I thought, she mused. The next morning, Trail woke up in Alex's arms and felt happy. After 20 minutes, they were lying facing each other, breathing heavily from exertion. "Damn, I'm going to be late if I don't hurry up," Alex remarked. "Let's save time by taking a shower together," Trail suggested, raising his eyebrows significantly. "It's definitely not going to save time," Alex objected. On Friday evening, their first appearance together took place in a restaurant. Alex wore a short red dress that she bought especially for this occasion. "Damn it, woman, you look amazing," Trail complimented. Alex was aware of her attractiveness, and she and Trail made an attractive couple. Throughout the evening, she noticed how men admired her. Physically exhausted, Alex left Trail's house late Sunday night to pick up the children from Chris's house. Over the weekend, she and Trail had intimate relationships late on Friday, 4 times on Saturday, and twice more on Sunday. Maintaining a permanent physical relationship with a partner who was younger than her turned out to be more difficult than Alex expected. A month later, she wearily headed to the car to pick up the children once again. On the way home, she felt emotionally empty. The more time she spent with Trail, the more their relationship blossomed physically but deteriorated emotionally. She couldn't help feeling belittled, realizing that Trail had established himself in his position. That night, she decided to sleep separately from Trail, reflecting that Chris had always treated her as an equal in their intimate moments. She mentally pushed those thoughts away, realizing that there was most likely a generational difference between her ex-husband and her lover. Alex refrained from introducing the children to her second partner. Although the children knew about Trail's existence, during the weeks when she was a guardian, Alex limited her communication with him to a couple of times a week, always during working hours. She had not yet introduced the children to her second love. On Wednesday, when Alex tried to contact Trail, he did not respond to her calls or messages. Concerned that he did not answer her calls, until noon on Thursday, she contacted him on her work phone. Receptionist Riley Gordon was initially hesitant to provide information about Trail's whereabouts. "I'm sorry, I can't disclose that information," Riley said, until Alex revealed that she was Trail's girlfriend and could not contact him. "He's been in the hospital since Tuesday evening," the secretary said. "It looks like he got into a fight near his favorite sports bar and was seriously injured. That might explain why you couldn't get in touch with him." After the secretary informed Alex of the necessary details, within a few minutes, Alex was in the hospital, looking at Trail's swollen and bruised face. "Why didn't you contact me?" "I only found out about it from your assistant 2 days later," Alex said. Due to her injuries, Alex couldn't see the look in Trail's eyes. He had a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and, to her surprise, 2 broken ribs. "It's your ex-husband's fault." "I know that," Trail muttered. "This vile man did not commit the attack himself, he paid others for it." "They will be captured by the police soon," Alex objected. No, it can't be true, Trail. Chris wouldn't resort to violence. He may have wanted a divorce, but he would never hurt anyone." "Perhaps that's why I foolishly believed that I could have 2 husbands," Alex said. "And what came of it?" Trail replied. "He's not as kind a person as you think. He will face the consequences. I will not stand on ceremony with him just because he is the father of your children. I'm sure he's not involved in this, but you should have let me know. I shouldn't have found out about it 2 days after the incident." Given Chris's calculated actions during the divorce, Alex couldn't dismiss the possibility that her ex-husband was involved in the attack on Trail. Feeling partly responsible for the attack, she spoke to Chris on the phone that day and demanded, "What is your motive, Chris? Are you satisfied now? Why are you shouting?" Chris replied calmly, puzzled by his ex-wife's outburst. "Nice try, Chris. Trail is furious and injured, and when the authorities catch up with you, you will face the consequences." "I won't be able to calm him down," Alex warned. "Whatever you say," Chris replied and ended the conversation, still not understanding the reason for Alex's excitement. Alex admitted that Chris seemed genuinely taken aback by her words. She couldn't help but wonder when he had become so adept at pretending to be innocent. There was an irony in that the police arrived at Chris's house about 20 minutes after his conversation with Alex on the phone. "I made fresh coffee. I've been waiting for you guys ever since my ex-wife called a few minutes ago," Chris told the police. According to her, something happened to her beloved second husband, and I'm probably suspect number one, he added with a sarcastic smile. Chris poured coffee for both officers and patiently answered their questions for 15 minutes. After they left, the officers agreed that the rejected ex-husband did not look like a suitable suspect. A month later, Chris was cleared of beating Trail. A few weeks after that, Chris and his father-in-law were quietly enjoying glasses of Angel's Envy rye at a bar on the outskirts of the city. "Thank you, Dad. I owe you a lot," Chris murmured gratefully. "The police were sure that I was involved in beating this idiot. They just couldn't ignore you. You were such an obvious target," George Taylor remarked. "But you don't owe me anything. I owe you this for what my stupid daughter did to you. You have been a wonderful husband and a wonderful father to my grandchildren," he added sincerely. "I'll tell you what, from now on you'll have to pay for drinks." "I would definitely get used to such a great drink," he joked. They clinked glasses, savoring the expensive amber liquid. 2 months after Trail's attack, Alex found herself craving intimacy so much that it was almost unbearable. She met another young man for whom she had feelings. Although it wasn't love, she craved physical intimacy. Just a few months ago, her needs had been met by 2 husbands, but now, after 2 months of abstinence, Alex was desperate. She had considered discussing the matter with Trail, but their relationship was no longer as close as it had been before the attack. When she was married to Chris, he was comfortable being the second man in a relationship, so in a similar situation, he should be comfortable being the first. For her own peace of mind, she decided that she would apologize later if necessary but would not ask for permission. Delman Leffer was almost as tall as Trail and looked even better. He grew up in New Orleans, and his speech mixed Cajun and traditional Southern accents. At the age of 25, he was more courteous but less brash than Trail and worked as a junior manager at one of the local companies. Ever since Alex first met him in line at a nearby Starbucks a few months ago, she had wondered if he would be able to fill the void left by her ex-husband in their new polyamorous life. It was time to explore this possibility. By the time Trail recovered enough to enter into an intimate relationship, Delman had no problem taking on the former role of Alex's second husband. Alex visited her second partner twice a week, making appointments at a time when her children were old enough to cope with the few hours of her absence on Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings. As she did in marriage, it was just as important to keep Delman confidential, keeping Trail in the dark as Chris did with Trail. Chris and Alex only crossed paths when they exchanged custody of their children and attended school events together. Chris maintained a friendly attitude towards Alex during their communication, while Alex constantly tried to win back the favor of her ex-husband. It was their children who eventually revealed to Chris that his ex-wife had resumed a polyamorous lifestyle about 6 months after the divorce. Joe and Kayla casually mentioned that they often did household chores on Saturday while their mother went to the gym and spent the rest of the day with friends in other places, Josh stated firmly. "It's not just what she did to you, Dad. She destroyed our family," Chris advises. Chris had to admit that his son had correctly assessed the situation, but what really caught his attention was the news that his ex-wife had resumed the habit of telling their children about her Saturday gym trips. Chris refrained from telling the children about their mother's infidelity, and they were never interested in it when they were little. Chris decided to resolve this issue next week when the children would be with Alex. He borrowed a friend's car and parked a block from Alex's house, taking 2 Dunkin' Donuts and a cup of coffee with him. Lost in her thoughts about her morning conversation with Delman, Alex did not notice that she was being watched. Chris noticed Alex drive up to a house divided into 2 apartments. Finishing his second Bavarian cream donut, he wrote down the address and looked up to see a muscular young man without a shirt and in sports shorts warmly greeting his ex-wife with a kiss. "She clearly prefers younger men," Chris remarked aloud. He reached for the phone, pressing the button several times. He learned the name of the young man with a few more taps and grinned with satisfaction. "Thanks, Google, he remarked. Trail Liam did not recognize the caller ID displayed on his phone screen. At first, he considered sending the call to voicemail but eventually decided to pick up the phone. Trail Liam, how can I help you? He answered confidently but received a rude response. You can't help me, but I can help you, Chris replied without introducing himself. Taken aback, Trail replied angrily, what do you want? Isn't it a little late for an apology? He growled. I have no reason to apologize to you, but for my own benefit, I will do you a favor that you don't deserve. Do you know where your beloved woman is now? Chris explained, catching the gist. Isn't she with your kids? Chris continued, well, she's with a baby, just not with mine. She seems to have her own type of big guy, maybe about your height but younger. If it goes on like this, then in a few years she will be dating a child, Chris teased with a grin. Intrigued, Trail began to ask further questions. Let's say I believe you. Who is this guy? Chris told me the details. According to Google, this is Delman Leffer, who lives at 12 William Street. You'll have to figure out the rest yourself. I'm out of coffee, Chris said, ending the conversation. Alex was just entering Trail's house after work on Monday when she bumped into him. What the hell, Alex? Trail's voice, full of anger, echoed through the room. How long has this been going on? I told you I'd never share you. It's a bit hypocritical, don't you think? He remarked with a grin. It was acceptable for you to interfere in my marriage, but now that you've become my priority, you don't want anyone to interfere in yours. We have been together for several months now. It all started when you couldn't act. I feel emotions for him just like you do. If your real husband left you because of this, why do you think that I will stay after such disrespect? Trail asked. You may be wonderful, Alex, but no woman is worth all these problems. It won't be difficult for me to replace you, he said coldly. But you love me. You said you loved me, Alex protested. Apparently not enough, Trail replied coldly. 2 weeks later, Trail found himself at the urinal in his office when his knees buckled from sudden excruciating pain. Returning to his office with difficulty, he urgently contacted the doctor and explained to him what had happened. Showing compassion, the doctor ordered him to come for treatment immediately. After the injection and taking the prescribed medications, the doctor's nurse returned with a notebook and pen. After requesting the names and contact details of all recent intimate partners, the nurse received only one name from Trail, Alex Temple. Do you know if she had any other relationships during this time? The nurse asked softly. Trail blushed and replied, yes, she has another partner, Delman Leffer, and there is a possibility that she will resume a relationship with her ex-husband Chris. I can't say for sure, but it's a suspicion. The next day, Alex received a call from the county medical center and was informed about Trail's condition. Damn, this fool entered into an intimate relationship with someone else, breaking the rules and clearly not using protection. Trail is going to be furious, she mused to herself, feeling a knot in her stomach. Reluctantly, she gave the nurse the names of both her lovers over the phone, as required by law. Are you sure there were no others? The nurse asked again. Alex started off a little smug but then realized that the nurse was just doing her job. No, there is no one else, she clarified. The next day, Trail contacted Chris Temple ostensibly to repay a favor Chris had done him a few weeks earlier. Hi buddy, I just wanted to warn you. I've been checked out, so you should check in too, Trail informed him. Alex is my only partner, so I know it's from her. You didn't have an affair with her, did you? No way, Chris replied with contempt in his voice. The situation did not surprise him. After 8 years of being a bachelor, Chris decided never to get married again. This suited him perfectly, and he was not interested in finding a soulmate. After a routine Friday workout at the local YMCA, he stopped at a vending machine to have a coffee. A woman stood in front of him who did not seem to notice his presence and did not hurry to the vending machine. An imperceptible cough caught her attention, causing her to turn sharply to him. Looking closer, Chris noticed that she was an Asian woman with long black hair tied in a ponytail, dressed in a stylish workout suit, a tight burgundy top combined with matching yoga pants.